I am excited to talk to Executive Director at Free Enterprise Project, Mr. Stefan Padfield. And this is a topic that just drives me nuts. And a lot of companies do it, and I just don't understand why. Hi, Stefan. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks for taking me early, man. I don't know what's going on today. My brain, I left it at home in the sink, I think.
I think I have a little bit of that every day.
Good. Then I'm not Are you blonde? I need to know.
No, I can't use that as an excuse.
Well, I'm using it, so I guess there's only one. All right, so Morgan Stanley, it was made really, really clear that DEI doesn't get to be a thing because you got to be the right person for the job no matter what little group you fall into, and that's been made perfectly clear under this administration, but it appears they're still kind of doing their thing, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of this. The particular letter that you're referencing that we wrote to Morgan Stanley was basically initiated by an interview I did where I was talking about the fact that we've got a lot of companies that are saying they're walking back from these commitments to basically discriminate in the name of anti-discrimination and so on, and yet there are real questions that remain about the extent to which that's actually substantive rather than just rebranding or burying what they're actually doing. And so after that interview, I was contacted by someone who appears to be a whistleblower at Morgan Stanley, laid out a number of things that were problematic from that person's perspective, and then I went to verify and dig a little deeper, and I found a number of issues just based on publicly available information that from a pure bottom-line shareholder standpoint are concerning. And so I sent a letter, had basically 7 specific items and questions, all related to various manifestations of DEI and ESG, and sent that letter, and it's gotten quite a bit of attention. Have had a response from Morgan Stanley, but it's essentially been fundamentally a non-response. So we still have some work to do there.
I want to understand this. Now, I come from a family that is like the UN. We are the rainbow of people. We've got gay, we've got straight, we even have trans in our family. We've got black, we've got white, we've got Indian, we've got everybody. And none of us want to be handed something we didn't earn. So I don't understand why it's even a thing.
Yeah, it's really fascinating because you often actually have a dynamic. I know you're familiar with, at the National Center, we have Project 21. It's a group of tremendous black conservatives, right?
Yes, I talk to them all the time. I love them.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, if not completely 100%, they hate DEI. And one of the reasons is precisely because it puts this, scarlet letter, if you will, on every achievement that they properly earn based on their merit, because there's this question mark based on how systemically our institutions have bent the knee to this DEI agenda. So now everyone who's successful, who's a person of color, there's a question of whether or not they were a DEI hire, quote unquote. And so that's just one of the ways in which this is so problematic. But I think in terms of answering, how did we get here and why do these companies do these things that seem so obviously problematic, hurtful, harmful? And I think it's always important to recognize it's more than just one type of person and more than just one rationale, right? You have the true activists, the radicals, who are really all in on this neo-Marxist, neo-racist agenda. They really don't care whether they burn the institution down or take control of it. Either way, it's a win for them. And then you have the opportunists who are just following the money. And we've just come out of 4 years of a Biden administration where there was a lot of money to be had by playing the DEI game, even though it's essentially illegal. When the DOJ and the EEOC say, no, we're all in, go for it, all of a sudden it looks very different from a pure opportunistic perspective. I think you also have to recognize that there's a lot of people who just don't understand what's being done in the name of words that sound good, right? Diversity sounds good, equity sounds good, inclusion sounds good. If you don't look under the hood and you don't understand what's being done, it's a little confusing, and that's understandable. So there's, whether you refer to those people as useful idiots or rationally ignorant, right? That's a different issue and a different response. And then finally, I think we have an issue of cowardice, right? Which is fortunately changing. It's understandable that people would be hesitant to speak up in their institutions. Very good reasons not to. But fortunately, we've got more and more examples of people standing up and speaking up, and that empowers and encourages people who otherwise would stay silent. So it really took all of those to get us to where we are, and now we're starting to see the pendulum swing back. We're starting to see some common sense restored, but it's still going to take some time because each of those forces are still active.
Well, and here's the problem. The pendulum is swinging because someone with, functionality is in the White House right now. We had so many years of people pandering for votes and for whatever else it might be. I know you said it was in the name of money, and sometimes it was because, if you didn't follow along with the DEI thing, then they pulled your funds. Well, now they're pulling your funds if you do. So I can't imagine why they would continue to do this, and I can't imagine working for a company as someone who doesn't fall into that category and be overlooked. So aren't they facing potential lawsuits with this too?
Absolutely, and I think one of the things is I was just on another show, and this question came up specifically of, what are the applicable laws? And I think it's really important to note that we're not talking about any new laws, right? The executive orders that have been issued has simply made clear that we are actually going to enforce the existing civil rights law. We're actually going to go after institutions and individuals who are discriminating on the basis of race and sex, because as you say, we've just come out of a period where essentially the institutions that were supposed to uphold the law, DOJ, EEOC, the president, right, we're all in on basically breaking the law. I mean, we had the President of the United States say, I am going to appoint a Supreme Court justice on the basis of race and sex, right? So it was a upside-down world, and now we're just getting back to simply enforcing the law as written, and as it should be. And we've also had some wins in terms of clarification of the law. So certainly, the Supreme Court case that struck down affirmative action in college admissions. We've had cases that have made clear that there's no higher bar if you're bringing a quote-unquote reverse discrimination claim. We've had cases that have made clear that it only takes a little bit of harmful impact. Like, you don't have to show some dramatic harmful impact because discrimination is inherently so insidious. So all those things have basically just made clear, and I think we're going to find out as we go forward in the next year or so that it's going to be much easier, and there's more of an incentive for people, as you say, who are on the wrong end of this DEI agenda, and that can be a broad swath of people, are going to be bringing more cases, and we're going to see more costs imposed on these agendas.
Well, but the people are going to have to prove it, and if Morgan Stanley does not get rid of their DEI program, they have it in the bag, basically. So what I'm wondering is, are the people who were put in place because of DEI just going to get canned? And, the people who should be in there are going to be in there? Or what's happening with this?
Yeah, I think it's a very legitimate concern that people are simply getting moved into new positions. They're just getting new titles. But fortunately, we now have a real critical mass of organizations that are coming at this from a variety of perspectives. So it's not unusual at all to see one of those organizations basically put out an entire post that just will drill down on, here's this former HR director, here's the posts that they made that were just all in on this neo-racist, neo-Marxism, here's what their title was, here's what their title is now. So those sorts of things are going on, and certainly it's become easier to do that with the modern technology that we have, so you can, sort of scrape the various sources much more easily. So I do think while it takes a lot of work and somebody still needs to do it, we have a critical mass of actors who will continue to do that work, and there is a tipping point, right? At some point, I think if we keep doing this work as we need to, at some point organizations are going to realize the cost of trying to just move the deck chairs around on the Titanic are going to get too great, and they're going to just basically have a house cleaning, if you will, and just sever ties with people that are not adding value and, in fact, are undermining value.
And I think it's it's time. Affirmative action had its time, and that was in the 60s, and at this point, everybody pretty much has an equal opportunity to get to an education, have an education, come up through public schools, very well educated and prepared for college. They can get grants. They can get all these different things. So there's really no reason why anybody says, well, this person has an edge over me because of blah, blah, blah. I didn't get to go to college because we was po'. We was po'. We had 6 kids in a trailer house till I was almost in junior high. So that just isn't a factor anymore.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I find so incredibly frustrating is to the extent there are legitimate inequality concerns, and I believe there are, and I think most people will say, yes, we can point to things in this country that are still far from perfect. The solutions are right in front of us on a colorblind basis, on a basis that doesn't discriminate, right? We have pipeline problems. We have schools that are producing incredibly low results. You can go down the line, but you can address each of those issues at various stages of people's development in ways that are not based on discriminating on the basis of race and sex. I mean, I'll just give you one example, right? So if you were to take all the corporate resources that were invested in just hiring more black people because they're black and rather invested those in raising the floor on educational outcomes across the board, targeting the districts that have the lowest outcomes, you would get diversity impact, but you wouldn't be doing so by having a program that is facially discriminatory on the basis of race. And I think there are myriad ways to do that. So that's what's so frustrating is the solutions are there, the concerns can be addressed, but for some reason, and I think the reason is simply there is a critical, right, from the crits, the critical race theory and so on, an agenda that is all in on this just insidious desire to paint the U.S. as systemically racist. And anything that doesn't advance that agenda, no matter how costly, they're going to stay on the side of that narrative for their own reasons.
Well, it won't be long. We're almost out of time. Where do people go to learn more about the National Center for Public Policy Research and the Free Enterprise Project, sir?
Sure. So just go to nationalcenter.org. All our projects are there. And you can follow me personally on X at Stefan Padfield.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.